Thank you. This is our adult supervision, everybody. Chris Hardy has been fabulous helping me. Those of you who've worked with me know that's a full-time job. He's been great. Oh, now we got, Kim, we got more than we could ever need now. No one is allowed to ask this many questions. Actually, that's false. They gave us an extra half hour for this panel, so. All right, I'll tell you. All right, before we start, so you guys don't get distracted, because I know you. This is Lake Bulletin in Hungary. It's the largest inland lake in Europe. That's where we go in the summer to visit my children's great-grandma, who is 100. So turned 100 January 3rd. She's been through a lot, so she's feisty. You can't complain about anything because you'll, oh, my neck's really stiff today. Really, I'm 100. Like, okay, no, Mama, I got nothing. So that's what that is. Okay, so we shall start. Hello, General Sheridan. Thank you for coming. Okay, so we're going to start. Hello and welcome to our annual Current Launch Vehicle Update Panel. I'm Janet Karika, the chair and moderator of this panel, and we're happy again this year to have our representatives from ULA, Orbital, and SpaceX. Clay Morey sends his regrets. He is at SmallSat from Arianespace. He is usually here, and ILS, who is one of our newer members, could not make it this year, but they hope to be here next year. So for those of you new to our panel, our format remains the same. I'll do brief introductions, I've been lectured, brief introductions. Our panelists will speak for 10 to 15 minutes about their launch vehicle programs. We'll talk about both their current accomplishments, which have been many just in this last month, and they'll talk about their future plans and challenges. And then we'll have a Q&A session. And my colleague, Kim Wells, from the Commerce Department, has been kind enough to have the question cards. And what we'll do is have you write your questions down, and she will pass them up to me, and I will ask them. This both keeps us in control of the time and keeps the audience from speechifying, and y'all know what I'm talking about. So again, good reminder, and if you all could put your cell phones on vibrate or silent, that would be great. So to start with, I am Janet Karika. I work for Jacobs Technology, and I support the NASA Launch Services program based at Kennedy and the NASA Launch Services office at NASA headquarters. And I'm retired Air Force. My last assignment was the Director of Launch Programs for the PEO space in Washington, where we developed the EELV program. So without further ado, we will start with Mark Peller. And I'll get your stuff up first. Okay, there's your, here we go. And I'm learning with the PDFs, great, and you can drive. Mark is the director of the hardware value stream for ULA, manages EELV contracts with the Air Force, God bless you. And he was, prior to that, started in Rockwell in 90. And he and John share in common going to the University of California, San Diego, right? Correct. BS in Applied Mathematics, and MS in Aerospace Engineering from USC, and MBA at UC Irvine. And you're a licensed mechanical engineer, so mechanical engineers, well represented. So Mark, over to you. Oh, you want to do the video first? Well, yeah, we can do that. I'm ready to go. Do you want to do that? Oh, you don't want? Okay, no go. Here's your thing. We haven't pre-coordinated our flow. All right, you want to do this first? Okay. and then you can do the video.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Janet. My description of my title, if it's not intuitively self-obvious what I do, just to explain, I lead the teams responsible for providing engineering and program management support for launch vehicle procurement and production at ULA, and that includes both our product lines, Atlas and Delta. So I'm excited about having the opportunity to walk through here today with you an update on our company's operations for the last year since we were at this conference a year ago, and also look forward to some of the exciting opportunities that we're involved with here at ULA. So with that, now we will get to the video.
You want me to do it?
Yes.
Okay, I got it. I'll just minimize that.
United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the 6th GPS-2F satellite for the United States Air Force. Liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying AEHF-3 for the United States Air Force.
Go DMSP.
We have ignition and liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying the Defense Meteorological Satellite Program mission for the United States Air Force.
And liftoff of the Atlas V with Beta, looking for clues about the evolution of Mars through its atmosphere. Ignition and liftoff of the Atlas V with T-Drizzle, building our ability to meet the growing future of communications in space. Liftoff of the Delta II rocket with OCO2, tracking a greenhouse gas in seek of clues to climate change.
Go L39.
We have RD-180 ignition and liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying the NRO L39 mission.
And liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket carrying NROL 67.
We had liftoff of the Atlas V rocket carrying the NROL 33 payload for the National Reconnaissance Office.
We have liftoff of the United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the Space 4 mission for the United States Air Force.
Pretty cool video. That is all things that transpired here in the last 12 months for ULA. The reason we put that together, obviously it's exciting to watch all the launches, but it's more important, obviously, want to make sure everyone's aware and connects with the mission. And when I say the mission, not necessarily the spacecraft, but really the mission that that spacecraft enables that, that benefits this country and people all across the world. When you watch that video, and if you're at the launch site, you know, from the perspective of someone sitting at the launch base, all those launches look fairly similar. We all watch them fly over the horizon. Obviously, those of you in this room know that there's a difference, and those missions are all going to different places with different payloads supporting different missions. We put this chart together just to show you what we have accomplished, what we've been able to deliver here to orbit in the last 12 months. And it's a full range of missions as well as capabilities that we'd help support, all the way from suborbital and LEO missions. As you can see, a suborbital, a whole bunch of CubeSats and other smaller payloads that have taken advantage of our rideshare program, all the way up to MEO, to GSO, direct inject GSO, very unique capability. We just exercised last week for the Avspace 4 mission. And then finally, interplanetary. Those are all things that United Launch Alliance has supported in the last 12 months. Oops. This is an overview of our manifest. This year, and looking back and looking forward a year, last year we had a very successful mission with 11 EELV class launches utilizing the Delta IV and Atlas V launch systems. As you can see across the top, we have 5 launch complexes that we use to support Atlas V, Delta IV, and Delta II, 3 on the West Coast, 2 on the East Coast. This year, we've picked up the pace, adding 2 more missions in the EELV class for a total of 13, and we've seen the return of Delta II after a few-year hiatus. Total of 15 missions on the docket for this year, and with the successful launch of GPS 2F7 last Friday, and earlier in the week on Monday, Avspace 4, we've got 9 of those 15 completed. And one of those, of course, being Delta II for our NASA customer, the OCO2 mission, just over a month ago from Vandenberg. Next year is equally as busy, back to 11 missions in the EELV class. Delta II is going to go on a little bit of a hiatus for, and not be on the manifest next year, but ready to support in out years for our NASA customer. On the couple charts ago, we mentioned a little bit about CubeSats and rideshare. And it's a program that at ULA we're very excited about. It's something we've been working with our customers and industry partners on for several years, and is really now starting to bear fruit. And the whole objective here is to make sure that we're fully utilizing the capability of our launch systems on every mission to the greatest extent possible. We have 3 different ways that we're enabling that right now. In the upper left, you see a picture. It's actually a Delta II second stage, and that has what we call the P-pod dispenser. And each one of those individual black boxes can hold up to 3 CubeSats, and we can put multiple dispensers on a vehicle. We flew that on Delta II a couple years ago from Vandenberg, a very successful mission, primary and secondary mission. And we actually have our Delta II mission coming up in the 4th quarter of this year for NASA that will also be equipped with P-pods, enabling a number of CubeSat missions. For Atlas, for CubeSats, we took that individual P-pod carrier and we integrated them to what we call the aft bulkhead carrier. So we have, that's in the middle picture there in gold. We have multiple P-pod dispensers that can deliver a significant number of CubeSats. We flew that. That is installed on the aft end of Centaur, or Atlas V second stage, and we flew that successfully in conjunction with a mission for the NRO last December. And we have 2 missions coming up on Atlas next year in 2015 that will utilize that aft bulkhead carrier. Don't have a picture here, but for both Delta IV and Atlas V, we have the EELV secondary payload adapter, commonly known as the ESPA ring. It fits on the forward end of the vehicle. It has multiple ports around it that support more sizable secondary payloads. And we actually flew that on Delta IV for the first time last Monday in support of the Avspace 4 for the U.S. Air Force, where we deployed the Angels payload. Other area that we're involved with that's really exciting for us is human launch services. You see on the left, you'll see the Orion test flight, or Exploration Flight Test 1, EFT1, which is on the manifest for this December. And on that, we're going to take a Delta IV heavy vehicle, put on top of it the Orion capsule, and launch it on a mission in an elliptical orbit to test several critical systems of that Orion vehicle before future flights of that spacecraft on the Space Launch System. Really excited about it. All the Delta IV hardware is at the launch site and being integrated right now. It is the next mission on the Delta IV manifest with the successful launch of Avspace 4 last week, And so the deck is clear, and we're moving forward with preparations for that launch in December. That will be the first launch on either a Delta IV or an Atlas V, where we're flying in the unfaired configuration, which leads us to the next area of involvement in human launch, and that's commercial crew. So ULA, as a launch service provider, has been working with Boeing and Sierra Nevada for several years to help them in development of their systems in support of commercial crew and to be their launch provider. And we look forward to continued involvement in that program with the Atlas V vehicle in the next phases of the CCTCAP portion of that program. And then finally is the Space Launch System itself. And through Boeing, ULA is providing a second stage, the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, or ICPS. That's a derivative of our Delta IV 5-meter cryogenic stage that we fly on the Heavy and some other configurations of Delta IV. And that will fly in 2017 in the first test flight of SLS. So we're very pleased to be able to bring our expertise and the capabilities of our systems that we use in support of the expendable market and national security over to the human launch business. So to wrap it up, I just want to focus on the 3 areas and the real keys that ULA strives to deliver value to our customers, whether that be national security, exploration, or commercial endeavors. And that focus is really in 3 areas: mission success, continuous improvement, and capability. And mission success, it's all about delivering reliably our customers' critical assets to orbit on time and on budget, and doing that every time. And we have a 100% track record relative to mission success, with 86 missions now behind us at ULA. The other is continuous improvement, and that's a core value of ULA. And we are continually striving to reduce the cost of our products, as well as improve the performance of our operations, production operations, launch operations, the entire value stream. In terms of schedule, trying to reduce our cycle time, that improves our schedule reliability. In the end, gives our customer more options and improves manifest flexibility, which is something very desirable for our customers. On the cost side, our recent block buy acquisition with the United States Air Force and the Department of Defense is reducing the cost to the taxpayer of approximately $4 billion over the next 5 years. And finally is capability. With the Atlas and Delta product lines, we have a full range of products that are fully certified to meet the full range of capabilities or needs of our customers, through LEO missions all the way through geostationary, direct inject geostationary, and finally interplanetary. So 86 launches since the formation of the company, 100% mission success, and we just updated the slide there to reflect our Delta and Atlas launches of last week. So that is the conclusion of my presentation, and thank you for the time, and I look forward to addressing your questions here shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. So this has been, even just this last month, an exciting, as you can see, time for all 3 of our panelist companies. As he said, starting with, and we've launched all the launch vehicles when you think about it in the manifest, starting with Delta II, July 2nd with OCO, and going into Antares, which launched in July 13th. We have Aspiki 4 on a Delta IV, then we had GPS on an Atlas V, and then we had, again, the Falcon 9 launch, just depending on where you live, this morning. And so it is really an exciting time, and it's so great for those of us that have been in the launch business over 30 years that it's really great to see this kind of ops tempo. It's a nice challenge to have. So our next speaker is John Steinmeier. He is the Senior Program Manager for Business Development and Strategic Planning for the Launch Systems Group at Orbital. Prior to that, he worked Sea Launch and many other fascinating companies that support our launch business. He's been 25 years directly working with various forms of launch vehicles. He has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, UC San Diego, and an MBA in focus on international business from USC. I always like to highlight the backgrounds of our panelists because part of Lauren and my passion, which is STEM, I mean, it really does matter that geeks get cool jobs. So I always want to foot stomp that. John, I will call up your stuff and then have you come up and speak. And now, do you want your video first, or do you want your charts first?
We'll run the ubiquitous launch video first.
All right, we will do that first.
So it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you, Janet. The video will highlight a few of our recent launches of a few of our launch vehicles.
I always get panicky with the QuickTime thing, right? It's a NASA computer. Don't judge. Lauren, what'd you say? Control F?
Yes.
All right.
There we go. Thanks.
All right.
We have sound.
We should. We did before. We did just a minute ago, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't just me.
No high energy music.
That was good music. I was listening to it. No idea. Hey, hey, hey. Judger. Such a judger. Okay, let's see. We'll do it this way. Here's how we'll do it. Let's start over. Okay, I'm going to start it over. You guys hang in there.
That's why we have 2.5 hours.
That's right. Seriously, did you notice that? 2.5 hours. This is my reward for ops checking all of this ahead of time. I hate QuickTime, I swear. Okay. Oh, this is great. Okay. Y'all just forgive me. Okay, we're going to do this again. I blame Pyzinski. It's his video. I'm going to hit yes this time.
Really? Not through the speaker.
Yeah. Better? This one. Are we getting it? Oh.
Nelson, take it go for launch.
See it go for launch. PLC confirmed.
Thank you.
PLC, drop on my mark. 3, 2, 1, drop.
This is away. And ignition of the Pegasus rocket.
Okay, so there's some recent launches of at least a few of our launch vehicles. And if Janet will help me drive
yes.
back to the presentation.
Promise. That part I can do. Oh, I just closed it. There we go. Where are you? This is you. And I like this guy better. There we go. Full screen. Ready?
There we go. Fantastic. All right, thanks. So Orbital is actually a full-service space company, and consider ourselves a leading developer and manufacturer of all phases of small and medium-class space systems. We have a 32-year record of reliable, rapid, and affordable development and production. We serve all customers in the commercial, national security, and the civil markets. To date, we have fielded over 1,050 satellites and launch vehicles, or have those under contract. And you see how those break down there. We have about 3,500 employees over facilities across the U.S., occupying about 1.6 million square feet. We're a publicly traded company, and we have revenues of about $1.5 billion expected for this year, and a contract backlog of just under $5 billion through 2018. Orbital is structured in three fairly well-balanced business segments: launch vehicles, satellites and space systems, and advanced programs, each comprising roughly a third of our total revenue. And since our inception, we have fielded over 800 space missions across those various segments. And you see how that breaks down. 78 commercial satellites. As of last week, 75 government satellites. 3 were launched on the Delta IV launch vehicle that Mark mentioned. 41 space payloads, 78 space launch vehicles, including the most recent Antares launch. 202 interceptor and target vehicles, including a successful intercept test just a few weeks ago, and 345 sounding rockets. Within the last 18 months, I think we've had a total of at least 10 different specific launch events, including space launch, interceptor, and sounding rockets. But focusing on specifically space launch, this is our family of launch vehicles. Starting at the low end of performance, we have the Pegasus XL, the air-launched vehicle that you saw in the video. Moving up the performance spectrum, we have the Minotaur C launch vehicle, which is essentially a ground launch version of the Pegasus vehicle. We have the family of Minotaur launch vehicles, which is a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Air Force. And then we have the medium performance Antares launch vehicle. There's a lot of synergy with all these programs, including synergy with our GMD boost vehicles that we make for the U.S. Air Force. 12 different space and strategic launch vehicles developed, and I think once again over the last 18 months we've had I believe 10 specific launch events of those various vehicles. So I'll give you a little insight into each of the vehicles. First is the Pegasus vehicle, once again an air-launched wing 3-stage solid motor launch vehicle. Operations for Pegasus are based out of Vandenberg, but we can basically deliver that vehicle to any of the ranges in the United States. We've covered international missions as well. Allows us to target any inclination with that launch vehicle. 42 missions, 28 consecutive successes since '97. We're the only small launch vehicle that's certified by NASA for the launch of Category 3 payloads. And we're available essentially to all customers through the NASA NLS contract, commercial contract, single launch, multiple manifest launches, variety of payloads to a variety of orbits. The Minotaur series of launch vehicles is a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Air Force, where we field multi-stage solid propulsion launch vehicles utilizing refurbished ICBM motors and new build upper stages. There are multiple configurations. There's 4 specific configurations, but each one of those are tailorable to specific performance needs. The Minotaur family has 100% reliability on 25 missions over the course of the last 14 years. The Minotaur vehicle is compatible with all the U.S. launch sites and is available through the Air Force OSP-3 contract. The Minotaur C launch vehicle addresses the commercial and NASA launch markets. It's essentially a commercial variant of Minotaur. It combines the payload accommodations, upper stage, and avionics from the Minotaur series of launch vehicles with the heritage booster stages of the Taurus XL vehicle, utilizing flight-proven software from across all our programs. The first mission for Minotaur C, we're pleased to be on contract with Skybox for launch of 6 of the satellites in their constellation. And the Minotaur C is available both commercially and through NASA. Lastly, we have the Antares launch vehicle, which provides proven medium lift performance. We're currently under contract with Antares for NASA for cargo resupply. Of the 10 missions under contract, so far we've executed 4 of those. But the vehicle is essentially available to all customers, NASA, Air Force, and commercial. Looking at the vehicle from the bottom up, the first stage is liquid oxygen kerosene fueled, powered by 2 Aerojet Rocketdyne AJ-26 engines with independent thrust vectoring, producing about 740,000 pounds of thrust at sea level. The booster stage is provided to us by Yuzhnoye Yuzhmash in the Ukraine. The second stage is powered by a ATK Castor 30 series of motors. The last mission utilized a Castor 30B solid motor. Future cargo resupply missions will incorporate a larger Castor 30 XL solid rocket motor for that second stage. Uses our orbital developed avionics, which are common predominantly throughout our whole fleet of launch vehicles. And at the forward end is a 3.9 meter composite fairing. Out of our Wallops, the Wallops flight facility, we can address LEO missions, and we're currently working with the NASA Wallops range. We have conditional approval to launch higher inclination missions from the Wallops launch site with a few more demonstrated launches. Successful Antares missions to date, we have 4 of them. Initially our demo mission last April, followed by the COTS demo mission, which was the first actual launch of the Cygnus cargo transfer vehicle, and then to date 2 cargo resupply missions in January and July of this year. And this slide shows the successful cargo resupply missions. 3 of them to date, 3 missions over the course of the last 10 months, so far delivering 3,830 kilograms of cargo to the space station. Subsequent missions will deliver even more cargo per mission to the space station. We have several enhancements planned for the Antares launch system in the near term. The Castor 30 XL solid motor, as I mentioned, will be incorporated on our next launch, which is scheduled for October. Ultimately, it will increase the performance of the vehicle by over 1,000 kilograms. We have 2 third stages that are available for specific missions, a Star 48 vectorable thrust, upper stage solid motor, and a bipropellant injection stage also available, which is derived largely from our satellite propulsion systems. We continue to explore West Coast launch sites, and we're also in the phases of down select for a long-term main engine system solution for the Antares vehicle. That solution clearly will also have some impact on the chosen launch sites. So in summary, Orbital has over 30 years of successful space launch system and development. We're leading supplier of small to medium launch, both launch vehicles and launch systems. Antares and Cygnus are currently fulfilling our NASA contracts for ISS cargo resupply, and we hope to do that, continue that business in the future. We deliver our missions on time, on budget, and on plan. So thank you.
Oh, okay. So I'll remind you to write any questions down that you have, or just raise your hand if you want to write a question, and Kim will be happy to bring you a question sheet, and we'll start passing those up soon so I can get them organized for our questions. Lauren, you want to do charts first or video first?
Charts.
Charts first. Okay, so our next speaker is Lauren Dreyer. She is the Director of Business Affairs for SpaceX. She joined 8 years ago. As I said before, she's passionate about STEM. I have to say that she was fundraising chair for, if you've heard of it, the Frank J. Red Student Scholarship Competition from 2010 to 2012, and she helped raise $150,000 for student scholarships, which is fabulous. She has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Baylor, and her MBA is from Texas A&M, where my daughter goes, so whoop. And I will pull up the presentation first for Lauren, who I must say gave me this morning, so huge respect for getting these charts done after your launch. Okay, again, Control F, right? She's teaching me. Never mind, that was not it. I'll let you do it. You know more about this than I do.
Great,
Well,
thank you, Janet. I think the lesson today is if you want to be on this panel, get a mechanical engineering degree and an MBA.
That's right. See, it's NASA stuff. What are you, an Apple person? I think we should be able to go down to the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't know, just click on it and see.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right. So SpaceX was founded 12 years ago, and before yesterday had 9 facilities across the United States where we design, test, launch our vehicles. And as you may have heard yesterday, we announced a 10th facility, the world's first commercial orbital launch site, which will be located at the very tip of Texas, 20 miles east of Brownsville. So very exciting. We build the world's most advanced launch vehicles and spacecraft, which is a testament to all American products and ingenuity. The Falcon family of vehicles is the first family designed entirely in the 21st century and was designed from the ground up to maximize reliability. This is a 2-stage vehicle with multiple engines on the first stage that minimizes the number of separation events and also offers engine out reliability shortly after liftoff. We're able to sustain a loss of more than one unplanned engine shutdown at any point in flight and still successfully complete the mission. Our vehicles are all American, produced entirely at our facility here in Southern California near Los Angeles, where we build about 70% of those vehicles. Importantly, we don't rely on any vulnerable foreign supply chains either. The Merlin engine is an all-American rocket engine. It's liquid oxygen and kerosene-based. The 9-engine configuration on the first stage of the Falcon 9 produces over 1.3 million pounds force of thrust at sea level, and it has the highest thrust-to-weight ratio of any booster engine ever made. The engine is highly reliable and has flight heritage. With this morning's flight for AsiaSat 8, we've flown more than 100 Merlin engines, and that's providing more heritage than many other rocket systems to date. Importantly, this engine is designed for production. It's a simple design, designed with manufacturing in mind. The repeatability that we offer in-house enhances quality assurance and reliability. We're currently producing 5 engines a week and have the capacity to manufacture 10 a week, making us the largest engine manufacturer by volume in the world. With this morning's launch of AsiaSat 8, we've had 11 successful missions of the Falcon 9 in a row, meeting 100% of primary customer mission objectives on those flights. Importantly, 6 of those have been since September of 2013, so in less than a year. And we've done 2 within the past 22 days, OrbCom in early July and AsiaSat this morning, so very exciting. With respect to EELV certification, we're aggressively pursuing new entrant certification. It's a robust and extensive process. Recent progress is the Air Force has certified the 3 flights necessary as part of the certification process, and we've got a team working aggressively to complete the necessary engineering review boards and audits. We expect to complete certification by the end of this year. On the NASA side, our Dragon spacecraft is supplying the International Space Station under the Cargo Resupply Services contract. That's a contract for 12 missions, and we've flown 3 of those to date, and we'll fly a couple more this year. Importantly, we have the only capability to bring significant cargo back from space in the world. The Dragon version 2 was unveiled in May of this year. It represents a massive step forward in space access, integrating the most advanced technology in the world and offering the safest, most reliable, and most affordable method of astronaut transportation in history. The Dragon V2 will be capable of carrying up to 7 astronauts to and from space as early as 2016. It integrates a highly robust Super Draco launch abort system to ensure crew safety at any point from launch until reaching orbit. There's 8 Super Draco engines which have up to 120,000 pounds of axial thrust. It includes significant redundancy, so we can actually lose 2 of those Super Draco engines and still land safely. Incidentally, this will also be the first 3D printed propulsion system ever to fly to space, which is exciting in terms of manufacturing advances. Looking broadly at the commercial market and our manifest, we have more than 40 missions worth almost $5 billion on our manifest firm contracts today. In 2015, we'll launch nearly 1/3 of the commercial GTO launches. And as you can see from the pie chart, it's a diverse customer base representing commercial, U.S. government, and international government customers. And what this means for the United States is SpaceX has been able to help return commercial space launch dominance to the U.S. The emergence of the Falcon family of rockets means the U.S. is once again poised to be a commercial launch market leader after that competitiveness degrading over the past 3 decades. In terms of reusability, I work out of our Texas test facility primarily and have gotten to witness this program firsthand. Very exciting, and we've made great strides towards reusability. It began with our Grasshopper program. We completed 8 successful flights of the Grasshopper vehicle, which was a 10-story vertical takeoff, vertical landing vehicle. We've now moved on to vertical takeoff, vertical landing flights of the Falcon 9 reusable dev vehicle. We're currently conducting low-altitude tests in McGregor, Texas, Central Texas, and we'll move to New Mexico in the near future to perform high-altitude testing, proving out the design and technologies needed for full and rapid reuse of the Falcon 9 first stages. Now, in terms of flights, 2 recent missions, CRS-3 and OrbCom OG-2, both first stages off of those missions, after separation, they came back, slowed their descent, and splashed down softly in the Atlantic Ocean, giving us some great flight data on that capability. And with that, I'll turn it over to a video in case you haven't seen enough rocket launches today.
Let me do it.
We have liftoff of the Falcon 9.
First stage propelling station active.
Power system is nominal and we have good telemetry log.
So look inside our headquarters in Hawthorne. Beautiful Merlin 1D engines.
3, 2, 1.
Now inside mission control.
We have liftoff of the Falcon 9.
first. Here's a look at the Dragon capsule making its way towards the International Space Station.
The Falcon 9 reusable dev vehicle flying out of McGregor, Texas. This is a look at splashdown. So in conclusion, it's been a busy and will continue to be a busy and exciting time for SpaceX. Thank you so much for your time today and watching that stuff. It just never gets old, does it?
No. Okay, thank you to my panelists, and we will now begin the Q&A portion. Again, write any questions that you have down, and Kim will kindly collect them for you. Just hold them up. And so I'm going to start with a question for all of you. You've addressed it somewhat, but maybe you can go into a little bit more depth for your future plans for either follow-on rockets or some enhanced capabilities of your current propulsion systems or rockets. And we'll just go from this side over and start with you, Mark.
Well, we're very focused right now on executing our current backlog of 50 missions, but we certainly are looking at alternatives, particularly in the area of propulsion systems for Atlas. We're looking at the viability of continued use of the Russian-supplied RD-180, as well as domestic production of that engine to address the perception of risk relative to supply of that engine. And as you may have seen in the press, we've issued a number of contracts with domestic engine suppliers to study options for a new domestically developed and provided LOX hydrocarbon engine to power a first stage for future use. That's been our primary focus.
Thank you. John.
Well, as I mentioned, the next launch of Antares will feature the Castor 30 XL, larger
Can you guys hear okay?
solid motor upper stage, which will increase the performance of that launch vehicle by a little over 1,000 kilograms. And then we are also currently in the throes of a main propulsion, first stage propulsion decision for the long term for Antares. The 4 flights today have all utilized the Aerojet Rocketdyne AJ-26 engines, we have, as Aerojet Rocketdyne has an inventory of those engines that are sufficient to get us through the missions that are under contract, with engines beyond that, but we knew early on at the inception of the program that there was a limited supply of those engines. So we have been searching for another alternative solution, both globally and domestically. So we're in the final throes of that, and when we have supplier under contract, we'll let you know.
Lauren?
Well, at SpaceX, we're always innovating and always looking towards the next thing. We invest a significant amount in R&D. The Dragon version 2, obviously, that I talked about is going to be a big deal for us as we move into, hopefully, crew carriage in the near future. You know, it's also, you know, about executing on our current contracts and that sort of thing. So we'll continue to innovate, but nothing more than I just covered.
Okay. So this one's for John. Can you tell us more about Minotaur 6?
Minotaur 6. So as I mentioned, there's several, it's hard to call them standard configurations, but 4 basic configurations of Minotaur. The one that had been utilized probably the most is the Minotaur 4 configuration. And the Minotaur 6 actually adds an additional solid motor as a booster stage to the Minotaur 6 vehicle. So that vehicle has gone through its PDR level design. It's even beyond that, actually. And it's on the OSP3 contract as an available option. It's attractive because it does offer some limited GTO performance out of the East Coast launch site, specifically out of a Florida launch site.
Thank you. So Mark, can you share the status of how the Atlas Delta Common Avionics is coming?
Sure. Common avionics, right now we're flying Atlas and Delta with what we call the heritage avionics systems that were developed when those products were part of our parent companies, Lockheed and Boeing. And as any of you who are involved in the avionics business understand that obsolescence issues are something we're continually dealing with and periodically drive you to redesign these systems. And so what we have chosen to do here is develop a common system, or at least 95% of it is common between the two launch vehicles. And this would be to be implemented on Delta 4 and Atlas 5. And we completed a CDR in the first quarter for the initial Atlas implementation. We will be implementing it in a phased approach as we fly out our, quote, heritage avionics on the two programs. So right now we expect to fly that for the first time on Atlas in the fourth quarter of next year. And it will be implemented on Delta in two phases over the course of calendar year 17.
And for Lauren, how has the certification been going, both with the Air Force and with the NASA Launch Services Program? And there's a couple questions on this. You know, how are the audits and the technical reviews going specifically for the Air Force in meeting the December certification date?
Yeah, well, I certainly think it's going well. I'm not directly involved in that process, but I'm closely tied to the team that is. They're working aggressively on that, supporting all of the engineering review boards, the audits. It's a robust and extensive process, but we are doing everything we can on the SpaceX side to support the December date, and are looking forward to achieving it.
And I'll add, NASA Launch Services Program is certifying them to a Category 2, which is a medium risk, and the Air Force is certifying to Category 3 low risk, and LSP expects to have certification decisions also by late fall. So that should be coming out, a decision on that soon. So for the group in general, what other propulsion technologies other than cryogenic liquid fuel or solid rocket propellants are you examining for your launch or orbital insertion? And there's a follow-on just specifically with the methane engine for SpaceX. You know, are you looking at using it for other things like an upper stage or on Falcon 9 or Heavy? So we'll just go this way again, but what other propulsion technologies are you looking at, if you can say?
Well, I mentioned our interest in looking at alternative booster propulsion technologies for Atlas, and we are looking at a number of options. LOX hydrocarbon in nature, so that provides a couple different options there. Right now, that's primarily our focus is on boosters. On second stage, we're pretty happy with what we're operating right now in Atlas and Delta. We are pursuing new technologies for second stage attitude control to long-term get away from the use of hydrazine, and we're developing a hydrogen-oxygen powered thruster that we've taken to PDR, and we'll be going to CDR by the end of this year with the opportunity to do some demonstration tests on Centaur in coming years that would get us away from the use of hydrazine. And I think you all understand some of the challenges and dangers associated with using that as a propellant and going to an overall cleaner vehicle. So that's been our two areas of focus at ULA.
John, other propulsion tech?
Let's see, I guess like Mark, we're primarily focused on the near term, and as I mentioned, primarily booster propulsion. And in that selection, we're concentrating on primarily existing heritage technologies. So nothing terribly exotic. Long term, as a corporation, we're looking at other alternative propulsion solutions. The company has significant experience on the spacecraft side with ion propulsion and electric propulsion, and so any propulsion development, technology development is really concentrated more on the satellite spacecraft side than on the launch vehicle for right now.
And Lauren, are you looking at other types? I know we've talked about the Raptor, so maybe you can go into that. That's one of the new types of propulsion that you guys are looking at.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned Super Draco, which is a hydrazine-based engine. That's in active development and qualification right now at our Texas facility near Central Texas. With respect to the methane work that we're doing, it's early at this point, certainly an important objective for Elon with respect to potentially going to Mars. And that right now is in component level testing at NASA Stennis with our staff, and so we're making progress on it. But the near-term focus primarily is on executing the missions as we've got them.
Okay, great, thank you. So for John, there's two questions on Stratolaunch. Basically, how does that fit within the existing Antares performance? How is it put together, and just a general update on Orbital's activities with Stratolaunch?
So about all I can say is that Orbital is under contract to Stratolaunch for the development of what is now the Eagles and specifically the Thunderbolt launch vehicle. But it's their program and their project, so you have to go to Stratolaunch really to get the answers on that.
Okay, thank you. This one is for Mark. If ULA would design and produce more components in-house, do you think that would reduce the total rocket cost? And is that a business model that you all are looking at?
So we're certainly re-examining as we look toward the future beyond our current backlog of the mix of what we do in-house and what we do out. We do build the majority of our structures in-house. We do all the assembly and integration. We do a lot of other component level fab. We design majority of our own avionics, and we actually build some of that too. Propulsion, as you know, is one area where we have chosen to subcontract, and we will continue to look at that. I think what you need to ask yourself, the question is, bringing something in-house, what immediately does that change that you can't already, what type of efficiency does that provide that you can't have in a relationship with a subcontractor? Bringing things in-house doesn't automatically reduce our costs. You need to look at the complete picture and make the best business decision. And we are certainly taking that under consideration as we look forward to our what our competitive offering will be for FY18 and beyond.
Thank you. For Lauren, this is about reusability. How do you see the economic benefit and the business customer base and demand for reusable Falcon launches? And that's both for commercial and government customers. And what would be your target annual launch demand for that?
It's a great question. I think at this point, we're very focused on proving out the technology. Don't want to get ahead of ourselves in terms of thinking about, some of those more detailed long-term aspects of it. But, the initial results have been very promising. If you look at just say an airliner model of what that flight would cost, across the U.S. if you threw away the engines every time, it certainly would be extraordinarily higher. And it's a similar mindset of the engines on the Falcon 9 vehicle make up a significant portion of that cost. But I think we've got a lot of work to do still to demonstrate that, and we'll be focused on that near term.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start wading into the Russian engine issue, been getting the other ones a little bit out of the way as we move forward. On July 21st, Rogozin stated that Russia will continue the delivery of engines despite the Washington sanctions. He stated that at present, the sales of engines for Atlas and Antares rockets in the United States favor Russia, as the profits go directly for technological modernization of Russian enterprises producing the engines. So he has sort of walked back on his initial trampoline statements. And so I'm curious, so the question goes to ULA and Orbital. Have you seen any indications from your Russian colleagues of any plans now to restrict any sort of sales? And if not, then is the threat of being cut off really something that we would do probably more likely to ourselves? Mark?
We'll start. So the risk of a supply interruptions has been there from the beginning. From when Lockheed Martin made the decision, we're presented with a very compelling proposal from MPO and Energomash and Pratt & Whitney to develop the RD-180 and provide it. It's a compelling proposal from both a business perspective and a technical perspective, and led to our offering on Atlas III, and since then on Atlas V. And MPO and Energomash has delivered 70 engines for us, and used them on over 50 missions, all with 100% success. So we're very happy. At the working level, we've seen no change in our relationship. You know, we talk to the Russians almost every day. We've had a number of significant trips over there since the events in the Ukraine, and at our level, it has remained business as usual. And we are getting ready actually to take delivery of 2 more engines 2 weeks from today. Our counterparts at NPO and Energomash and the principals there have talked to Mr. Rogozin directly, and you know, made him aware of the significance of our business arrangement. You know, their commitments. They currently have a contract with us for 29 engines, the first 2 of which they're going to deliver here, as I mentioned, in 2 weeks, and the significant benefits that it provides their country. And I think that opened Mr. Rogozin's eyes and have led to his changes. That doesn't eliminate the risk of a supply interruption, and that's something that we have dealt with and have contingency plans in place since the beginning of the program. And primarily we do that through safety stock, maintaining approximately a 2-year inventory of RD-180s, so that if we were confronted by a long-term interruption in supply, we could still meet our commitments to our customer by shifting where appropriate missions to the Delta product line. And so we continue to monitor the situation, and we'll continue to evaluate along with our customers whether that risk, which we believe it's really been a change in the perception of the risk, not necessarily maybe a change in the actual risk, but whether that is something tolerable to us and our customers, and that's why we're looking at alternate engines long term, as well as potentially continuing to use the Russian supplied RD-180.
Thank you. John?
So as I mentioned in my briefing, the Antares currently uses 2 Aerojet Rocketdyne AJ-26 main engines as the booster propulsion. Those engines are Russian by heritage, and thus far there's really been no interruption in the technical support that Aerojet Rocketdyne is receiving from Kuznetsov in Russia. So for the immediate term, there's no issues there. You know, Orbital, as well as many others, have been advocating LOX kerosene, high performance LOX kerosene engine development in the U.S. for some time. Until recently, that really hasn't gathered too much attention. You know, we believe that technology does exist in the U.S. to develop, but it will take significant resources and certainly a number of years to field high-performance oxygen-rich stage combustion LOX kerosene systems. So in the interim, the best source of that technology is, as Mark suggested, Russia and the companies that are there that have perfected that technology, developed it, and it's in the best interest of the United States to maintain access to that technology until such time as something comparable is available in the United States.
Thank you. Lauren, one of the questions, SpaceX is an all-American, company, mostly designed the components within SpaceX themselves. Which components, like avionics or propulsion components, is purchased outside of SpaceX? What things are not within SpaceX?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Unfortunately, I can't speak to that. 70% on the whole, and you know, the Merlin engines themselves are built in the factory. Essentially, if we can procure it with higher quality, schedule assurance, and a comparable or lower cost, then we look to doing it outside. We do it in-house, and everything gets a make-buy decision on it. So generally that would be the stance, but I think going any deeper might get into proprietary.
Okay, thank you. For John, are there any long-term plans to develop a heavy lift launch vehicle for orbital?
Right now we're really concentrating on the medium lift segment of the marketplace, and there's really no plans to grow beyond the medium lift segment of the market. You know, we're continually evaluating market options and opportunities, but for this point in time, no.
So this is a fun one for all of you. Are there any considerations of acquiring some of the developing launch companies that are beginning to appear? You know, it's got Firefly and X-Core and Blue Origin, which is amusing. So I'm going to ask it because it's a fun question. You guys going to go gobble up people?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I think it's a fun question. John?
I mean,
you already sort of started, so I just thought I'd ask.
I'll certainly say we've been approached, and we evaluate those opportunities. There's some very exciting players in the marketplace, and it's a fascinating time to watch the development there. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. In the near term, we have a merger acquisition of our own that we'll be going into hopefully here later this year. So that's the crux of our focus. Yeah.
It's keeping you busy.
Yeah.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think that certainly is above my pay grade, but I wouldn't see any, you know, strong reason to pursue something like that.
Also for all of you, have there been any considerations in trying to use your upper stages for propellant depot refueling, any reuse as Earth departure stages, that sort of thing? Mark?
So we're a launch service provider. So we have worked some efforts in that area with some of our customers. We're developing for NASA what's called Coyote, which is an experiment where we're going to, first it's just a ground-based experiment, but providing a portion of a Centaur tank for ground testing to support a future experiment where we did an on-orbit transfer of propellant to this after a primary mission was complete, to demonstrate the basic feasibility of on-orbit transfer and establishment of a propellant depot. So we've been working closely with NASA and are about to actually deliver the Coyote ground test article later this month.
John?
Like Mark, we've participated in some of the studies that have been out there in that regard. Right now we don't have anything specifically under contract relative to propellant resupply. Looking at the broader picture, however, and the Cygnus vehicle itself, the Cygnus really lends itself to missions even beyond LEO. So we've looked at the Cygnus vehicle to execute some of those missions that are beyond LEO.
And Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I think SpaceX is always interested in things that would push the bounds and enable, you know, greater accomplishments in space. I don't know of anything specific, though, and certainly nothing under contract.
So again, Lauren, for you, a couple questions on the progress of the Falcon Heavy and expected launch dates, and also looking for any specifics on the Mars mission design plans.
Okay.
So
Great. With respect to Falcon Heavy, we just announced a deal with Inmarsat for 2 firm Falcon Heavy launches. There's also a 3rd Falcon 9 launch firm contract there with Inmarsat. We're certainly working towards development and launch as fast as we can. At this point, I can say 5 more launches of the Falcon 9 this year, and beyond that, I think we need to see how the rest of this year goes. But we're certainly working on the Falcon Heavy vehicle and trying to debut it because it's important to being able to deliver any satellite to any orbit, essentially. And with respect to Mars, I think Elon's the best one to speak to those plans, and he's done so pretty publicly.
Excuse me, for Mark, I get a lot of questions on this as well, so you're stuck with this one. How did you overcome the effects of the Dream Chaser? On just aerodynamic stability standpoint, lots of people ask this question. So, how is that working? How did you overcome it?
That's a good question, and I'll do my best to address it. There are challenges and a fair amount of work to integrate unfaired any spacecraft, regardless of what it's shaped like, to be quite honest, on the front of an EELV. And so for both Dream Chaser as well as CST-100 for Boeing, in conjunction with the primes, done an extensive amount of aerodynamic testing to characterize the forces and moments, as well as any dynamic environments that change as a result of having those vehicles on the front end. And so they've both been extensively tested, and they both have different effects on our launch vehicle versus flying a faired configuration. And those have been factored into the designs of those vehicles, as well as, in some cases, some changes that are required to launch vehicle. And that's all been reviewed in detail, at the CDRs, with the NASA commercial crew team.
For John, when do you expect to announce a decision on a first stage engine? Do you have a time frame in mind?
We do not have a specific time frame. We're in the throes of that decision, evaluating all options. We've received best and final offers from the possible candidates, and when we have made a decision and have that supplier under contract, we'll let everyone know.
Lauren, so with the announcement of the Brownsville, Texas site, there's a number of launch sites that SpaceX uses. What sort of missions are each of them tailored for? You mentioned, I think, commercial for Brownsville. How does that work?
Right, absolutely. So I think it's important to understand that the Brownsville, or South Texas rather, it's about 20 miles east of Brownsville.
I will call it the South Texas Launch Facility. Got it.
It will be specific to commercial and well suited for geo launches specifically. It doesn't replace any of our other launch sites. We've got both Slick 40 and here recently signed a lease for 39A in Florida. Certainly working from the Eastern Range, the assets necessary for government launches specifically are there, and that's not something the commercial site would offer. Doesn't mean a commercial launch couldn't go from one of those, but the robustness of our manifest, congestion at the other launch sites, that's what really drove us to look for a commercial site as well. And of course, on the West Coast, we've got our Slick 4 East at Vandenberg, which is well suited to polar sun-synchronous orbits and those that are highly inclined. So we'll continue to maintain both the East and West Coast launch sites, total of 3, plus developing South Texas to provide our customers the greatest flexibility and try and ensure on-time launches and to meet the commercial demand especially.
Thank you. So for all our panelists, we've all been doing a lot of P-pods and CubeSats and the Espering. We have all these different opportunities to get these small payloads into orbit. What are the challenges that you're seeing with this? I know we've been working with, there have been some issues with the FCC and making sure that, some people's pea pods or other people's space debris. So, you know, how you balance all that and how you fit it into a launch manifest with, let's say, a prime that needs to go. I'll start with you, Mark.
Well, the first challenge there is making sure that these are safe to operate, you know, and don't pose any risk during processing, don't pose any risk to our primary mission, but at the same time, not stifling innovation. We don't want to make this so difficult for these folks that they just walk away, even if we're offering them a free ride. So, you know, there's balance there, and working, you know, with our NASA or DoD customers who are primary on the mission to make sure that what we're doing is not causing any risk, whether it's technical or schedule, to the primary mission. But also, for ULA to date, it's been one of those customers, been the sponsor of it, and kind of the intermediary. So trying to work together to try to help these folks through the process to make sure that, you know, they are meeting our minimum standards and can safely fly on our mission. So that is the challenge for us, and we do realize that. I think realizing it is important, because like I said, in the end, we don't want to stifle innovation and set these unnecessarily, you know, create obstacles for these folks.
John, what do you see are the challenges also?
Well, at Orbital, we have extensive experience launching multiple payloads of all sizes. I think for a whole day last year, we had the record of the most satellites launched on a single mission, which I think was 28, until we were beaten the next day by a Nepper launch that had 29. But so we have a lot of experience in integrating those payloads, working with the various customers and agencies to bring those missions to fruition. The challenges are usually schedule and making the business case close. So schedule-wise and on the financial side, we really have relied on other agencies and other companies to make that happen. Jason Andrews and his company, and then NASA and their program for small satellites. So, you know, we are happy to accommodate those payloads. As Mark suggested earlier, we like to fully utilize the performance of our vehicles to the greatest extent possible, but we've really tried to reach out to other agencies to broker those for us, if you will, to make it happen.
Yeah. Lauren?
From what I've seen, one of the greatest challenges is how to manifest the small satellites efficiently and not disrupt the rest of the process. As the two gentlemen here have said, the scheduling of that and testing, making sure, I mean, integrating a satellite regardless of size is complex, and how to do it and how to make that scale for the number of small satellites that you might launch is certainly challenging.
Yeah. We won't go into the who owns the excess performance question. We debate that constantly. It's an emotional debate. But I'll ask Mark one more of our Russian engine questions, maybe not the last one. But
you can ask all the RD-180 questions.
Yeah, I know.
I'm ready.
We're ready. I know. We talked about that. So will it really take 8 years to provide a replacement, as some people have stated?
Well, it depends what you're asking for. So the 8 years was 5, 6, 8 in relation to development of a new large, you know, booster engine. Most of what we've been talking about, you know, has been a high performance oxygen-rich stage combustion RP, LOX RP, or some other LOX hydrocarbon, which we, you know, that's technology that's never been developed in this country. We have lots of LOX RP engines, but not the high-performance oxygen-rich stage combustion variety. So, I mean, just to provide some point of reference, I mean, the last new significant engine, not except for the Falcon engine, but large new engine that our industrial base in the U.S. developed was the RS-68 LOX hydrogen engine, and that was about 6 years before, from when we started full-scale development to first flight. And that's LOX hydrogen, and that derived a lot of technology from Rocketdyne's experience on the Space Shuttle main engine. So, I mean, that kind of puts it in perspective. So whether the right answer is 5 or 6, or some small variation, we think that's about right from where our starting point is. So one of the things that ULA is certainly advocating before we would embark on any kind of full-scale development in this country is continued investment in technology development to make sure we've picked the right solution and demonstrated the critical technologies before we really go forward and make that commitment for full-scale development.
Thank you. Lauren, with the very full manifest that SpaceX has on the books, do you see any challenges associated with adding potential future DoD missions? And also, does any of the limited turnaround times that the Cape has, does that affect you?
It's a great question. Essentially, I think we've planned for a manifest that includes DoD missions and is sized to include the commercial market, the international government market, civil U.S. market, and DoD for some time now, and have ramped up production capacity to accommodate that. As I said earlier, that's one of the reasons in terms of potential congestion at a particular launch site and the potential for that. That's one reason that we really went outside the box and started looking to develop our own launch site. And so we're putting plans like that in place to make sure that we can meet all customer commitments. So will it be a challenge? Sure, but I think it's one that we're planning for and have planned for some time.
Thank you. So for each of you, where do you develop, where are the new development engines being tested? I mean, in the various facilities that you use, just what are they? Just, or where are you testing the ones that you have? I know the RD-180s over in Russia, but.
So the existing engines we fly, RD-180s tested in Khimki, Russia. RL-10s, which support both Atlas and Delta, are tested in West Palm Beach, Florida. And the RS-68s for Delta IV, the booster engine, is tested at Stennis Space Center in Mississippi.
John?
So currently the AJ-26 engines are each acceptance tested at the Stennis facility in Mississippi. And the solid motors that we use that are developed by ATK are tested either at their facilities in Utah or most recently for the Castor 30XL development that was tested at AEDC.
Tullahoma, Tennessee.
Yep, exactly.
Y'all come back. Lauren?
So I think, as I mentioned earlier, I work out of our Texas test facility. Located near Waco, Texas, we have over 1,000 acres to where we test our Merlin 1D engines, the Merlin 1D vacuum engines, Draco thrusters, and the Super Draco engines. Throughout the site, we have 12 different test stands. We're averaging about 2 engine tests a day. A little over 250 SpaceX employees at that site. So it's very active. Exciting place to work, I must say selfishly, but we do all that testing in-house. I mentioned there's some component level testing going on at Stennis, but that's the exception for us. And then New Mexico will test eventually the high altitude Falcon 9 reusable dev vehicle. So yeah, primarily Texas.
Texas, thank you. So I was a member of the Mitchell study supporting NASA, and this question kind of cuts to that because we addressed that when you all came in and briefed. What is your view of the benefits of public-private partnerships if there was a new, in the future, engine development or launch system development in the future? How do you view public-private partnerships versus sort of a government-directed development program? And I'll go the other way. I'll start with Lauren.
Yeah. Well, I think we view public-private partnerships very positively based on our experience with the NASA Commercial Orbital Transportation Services program. It was really the first of its kind in the space acquisitions field, and was highly successful given we moved very quickly from Dragon COTS flights and demo missions into CRS flights. And I think that proved the model quite well, and we learned a lot. What was great about it was the flexibility to take requirements and design a system that met those, along with a host of other potential markets, which really maximizes the economic value of the overall system, as opposed to specifically designing it for one set of requirements or in one method.
John?
So clearly, we also view public-private partnerships as positive. With respect to the large-scale engine development effort that was the subject of the Mitchell Commission, I think one important aspect of that would be a public-private cooperative effort would help keep such a development on track, if you will. I think, you know, unfortunately, historically, there's been many government-led engine development efforts that have had a limited duration and have changed focus, and as a result, the technology really never came to fruition. So I believe a public-private cooperative development effort would help keep that on track through changing administrations and what have you.
Thank you. Mark?
Um,
Kind of our original ULA development in a way.
Right. So we certainly think either can work, and there's pros and cons to both. I think the schedule issues, and maybe the ability to more control the schedule and control your own destiny if you're a contractor, is something that in many cases makes the partnership more attractive. We certainly see a role for the government in helping with technology development that has, you know, broad applications and for potential multiple users. As you get more into full-scale development, we think it, you know, it likely needs to be focused on specific system that it's ultimately going to be fielded in. We certainly see a challenge trying to develop a full-scale system to a host of requirements for multiple users, and in the end, getting something, you know, on time that meets our cost objectives and ultimately meets our technical requirements. So, like I said, I think either can work. We certainly see an advantage of a greater role of public-private partnerships as we move closer in that development process to full-scale development.
Thank you. Specifically, I think for Lauren and John, what sort of reusable, what is the timeline for really having, do you think, reusability over and above like what Pegasus provides us today? I mean, do you think that this is something that we're going to see soon? And do you think that it'll, will there be challenges? One of my thoughts is will there be challenges to certifying and flight-worthiness certifications that the government does, you know, for vehicles that have flown multiple times? So.
Me to field that first?
John? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So I have to say that by background, I'm an advocate for reusable systems and that technology. Some of you may know that my father was the chief engineer on the DCX launch vehicle. Mr. Swikely is in the audience here, who was instrumental in that program. So, you know, that's in concept, you know, a great objective ultimately. However, there are numerous challenges to overcome to implement that. Right now, Orbital as a company is more focused on repeatable execution of standard configurations for our customer and maximizing the benefit of what we deliver to our customer. So reusability at this point in time is not a big part of that equation. Not that it's something that won't be considered ultimately, but for right now, that's not in our immediate trade space.
Thank you. Lauren?
So from a timeline perspective, and I want to emphasize this is a stretch for SpaceX, but it is a goal. We hope to land a first stage back on land by the end of this year. So we are working towards that. So that's near term, and is an important step towards eventually getting customer buy-in, whether it's commercial or government, to buying a vehicle that has reusability throughout. I think in the end, it's going to come down to data, just like everything else does, and it will be an extensive certification process. It'll be robust, just like we're going through right now. So we certainly don't think we would expect everyone to jump on board immediately, but there may be a business case that's compelling for some, and others will come along perhaps at a slower pace.
Thank you. Along those lines, I've gotten a question if there's any video or pics from last night's launch, and the scuttlebutt is that it went fine, including the splashdown. So can you share anything, any quick look stuff from last night's launch?
I didn't take a look at data this morning, but I do know it went well. Everybody was very, very happy. Video-wise, I think there were some ground station issues even prior to launch that we were anticipating, so I'm not quite sure what video we were able to capture. It's important to note, though, that that mission did not include return and splashdown of the first stage in a controlled manner. And it was a high-performance mission. The next AsiaSat mission will be the same. Other missions this year, though, should have that as a secondary mission objective for us. So I'd say stand by if there is anything. I'd follow Elon on Twitter. That's usually your best source to get that information as quickly as possible.
I gotta get better on Twitter. Dan, thank you, by the way, Dan, for tweeting I hear about us. So thank you for our panel. So we know SpaceX's successes on this, but I'm curious with both Orbital and ULA, are there ways, are there more innovative things that we can do to try to bring U.S. commercial satellite sales back to the U.S., satellite sales? SpaceX has been successful. I'm curious if there's more things that we can do. Are there things that the government can do that could help?
I think, so our companies, we've really geared the way we do business to cater to the U.S. government customer and to a great extent national security space. We are flying about one commercial mission a year. We have one next week up with Worldview, and we have 2 more on our manifest in the next year or so. So we've been very successful in that we've been able to, basically sell most of our production to the U.S. government and have a few extra opportunities a year for commercial. I'll be quite honest. We certainly would like to expand into the commercial market as we see potentially declines in the toward the end of this decade in national security space, and our great focus to enable that is actions that we need to take internally to be more competitive from a cost perspective, and that's really what we're focusing on.
Thank you. John?
So commercial satellite sales, satellites themselves, we're very aggressively pursuing. Orbital as a corporation, and the pending merger will help us even further address that. On a commercial launch side, the majority of our vehicles are available to all customers, including commercial customers. And as I mentioned, I think the next commercial launch we actually have on the manifest would be for Skybox for the launch of their initial satellites for the constellation. So we're actively pursuing those opportunities as well. The challenge, of course, in the commercial marketplace is competitiveness. I would say that previous experience working directly in the commercial market for sea launch, the overriding factor in commercial launch is really reliability, and then second is cost. So once the demonstrated reliability is there, cost is a secondary objective. There are certain players in the market that may view that otherwise, but ultimately it's reliability that drives that market.
Thank you. we're down to just a few last questions, unless you all have any ones you want to write. For Lauren, is it not a hard balance to, with all the innovation that SpaceX puts into their vehicles and constantly improving, you're also in the middle of certification with both NASA and the Air Force, where they need a stable configuration to certify. How do you balance those things? Because I know it's a challenge.
It certainly is a challenge. I think we look at the individual customer requirements, the requirements of certification, and the future contractual requirements for that, and determine the best way to balance it. Interestingly, our vice president of production came from Mini Cooper, and when we told him, I think that, we need you to build essentially 40 cores a year, and they might have different configurations. He's like, 40? You don't mean 400 or 400,000 of, cars that have all these different configurations? Because that's exactly the type of challenges that they deal with, whether it's different requirements from a nation standpoint, UK versus US, or from a state-to-state standpoint with different emissions requirements. And so I think, we're certainly going out and looking for good ideas from all different industries about how they balance different configurations within the same family and such. But certainly a challenge, but it's about communicating with those customers and figuring out a viable path forward to that. And I certainly think on the Air Force side and the NASA side, we've done that to a large extent, or are doing that in these conversations and certification efforts.
Thank you. This is for the whole panel. Do you see the demands for rideshare increasing, and what business plans, if any, would you change for these type of payloads, and do you think that that's going to drive, do you see a small launch vehicle market, or is this going to prevent one from emerging? We have a lot of small launch vehicle startups that are starting to present themselves. Mark?
I don't think rideshare on like an EELV class vehicle is an impediment to development of small launch vehicles, if there really is that business case out there. That's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
Our rideshare programs to date have been sponsored by the primary customer on the mission, and the business arrangements have been coordinated through them. So it's a bonus. I don't think anything bad is going to happen. I don't think we're going to stifle or limit anyone's opportunities in the small launch vehicle market if we happen to take advantage of some excess capability and have a sponsor in the form of Air Force or NASA, for example.
John?
So I think the demand will certainly increase, and as I mentioned, all our vehicles can accommodate various secondary payloads of all configurations. I think perhaps the more interesting development in the next several years would be the Air Force's decisions relative to disaggregation of their architectures, and how that opens up opportunities for more targeted launches of smaller payloads in non-traditional payload classes. So we're actively watching those developments. We're poised to support that across a range of launch vehicles, and it will be fascinating to see how that develops.
Lauren?
It's certainly an interesting question in terms of where the market will go satellite size-wise, and where the vehicles need to be accordingly. Interesting that the Small Satellite Conference is going on right now. I'm sure they're asking that same exact question. There's whole presentations devoted to that. I think in general, SpaceX welcomes competition and innovation, and if that comes from somebody developing a new vehicle that serves a market, great.
Thank you. We're going to wrap up. I'll ask our panelists for any final comments or thoughts that they want to share. But prior to doing that, I thank them very much for being pinch hitters. Lots of dynamic things going on. People being called to Washington, small sat going on. So I'm very thankful for them to come in and support this panel, which I think is always very enjoyable and a lot of great data. And I thank you all also for staying with us for this panel. it's a pleasure to do every year. So thank you all for supporting it also. Final thoughts, again, we'll go from Mark down to Lauren, and then I thank you all.
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity for ULA. A lot of really interesting questions, and this is some real exciting times. Yeah. Executing a very busy manifest, our backlog of 50 missions, while at the same time looking at potentially some significant investments and redesign or evolution of our products to be more competitive and to provide new capabilities to our customers down the road. So pretty exciting time in the launch business.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Janet, for the opportunity to be here today, and I'll echo Mark's sentiments. It's a very exciting time to be in the launch business, and Orbital is pleased to be an integral part of that.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks, Janet. It's been fun, and you know, I agree with these two guys. You know, there's definitely common ground there that that this is an exciting time in this industry, and I look forward to seeing, you know, this time next year what all's been done. So.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.